When it comes to bands that laid the groundwork for punk, glam rock, and raw, rebellious energy, few were as influential as the New York Dolls. With their androgynous fashion, loud guitars, and defiant attitude, they became one of the most iconic and provocative bands of the early 1970s. Their name, just like their music and style, had an intriguing mix of grit, glamour, and irony, perfectly capturing what they stood for. The story of the New York Dolls began in the streets of New York City, where a group of musicians sought to shake up the stale rock scene with something wilder and more chaotic. Originally formed in 1971, the lineup included David Johansen, vocals, Johnny Thunders, guitar, Sylvan, guitar, Arthur Kane, bass, and Billy Mersha, drums. Their sound blended the raw energy of garage rock with the flamboyance of glam, setting the stage for the punk explosion that would follow later in the decade. But before they could change rock and roll forever, they needed a name that embodied their larger-than-life persona. The inspiration for the name New York Dolls came from an unlikely source: a toy repair shop. Founding member Sylvan had been working across the street from a store called New York Doll Hospital, a Manhattan shop specializing in fixing broken dolls. The name caught his attention. It had a strange, almost poetic quality to it. It felt simultaneously tough and delicate, just like the band itself. The juxtaposition of New York, a city known for its grit and intensity, with dolls, something traditionally associated with fragility and beauty, perfectly represented their aesthetic. It wasn't just a cool-sounding name. It also reflected their approach to rock music. The New York Dolls were all about breaking the rules of gender and fashion, wearing women's clothing, high heels, and heavy makeup, which at the time was considered shocking for a rock band. Their glam meets punk look was as much a rebellion against traditional masculinity as it was a statement about the excess and theatricality of rock and roll. The name New York Dolls suited them perfectly. It was ironic, playful, and completely unforgettable. Once they hit the scene, the New York Dolls became the embodiment of rock decadence. Their self-titled debut album, produced by Todd Rundgren in 1973, featured classics like Personality Crisis, Trash, and Jet Boy, songs that dripped with attitude, swagger, and unfiltered rock and roll energy. Their music influenced punk legends like the Ramones, Sex Pistols, and The Clash, as well as later glam and hard rock acts like Guns N' Roses and Mötley Crüe. Despite their legendary status today, mainstream success eluded the New York Dolls during their initial run. They were too wild, too ahead of their time, and too unpredictable for the record industry to handle. By 1976, internal struggles, drug addiction, and the changing music landscape led to their breakup, but their legacy had already been cemented. Decades later, the name New York Dolls remains synonymous with the raw, rebellious, and gender-bending spirit of early punk rock. Even after their 2004 reunion, which introduced them to a new generation, their name continued to carry its original meaning, a mix of toughness, glamour, and attitude. They weren't just a band, they were a statement. From a tiny doll repair shop in Manhattan to the halls of rock and roll history, the name New York Dolls has become an enduring symbol of nonconformity, raw energy, and the fearless pursuit of musical chaos.